Hi, welcome back to Anyone Can Paint. I sure hope that you guys are painting along with me. You got your brushes and your paints out, and you're just kind of throwing some brushes all over the place and some paint on the walls and everything else. This is going to be a lot of fun. We're going to continue on where we left off last week. We're going to continue to bring out some highlights in these bushes all the way across. We're going to start throwing some rocks in on this bank that's coming down, and we'll start putting some rocks and things along the river. So if you get your large flat bristle brush, get it wet, damp, and we're going to continue on with the color that we used. We had some green and some yellow. And you want to push your brush way down so the bristles open up real wide, so it gets just full of paint just like that. And we're going to come through and we'll put some over here. And it's just lightly tapping. There's some places that you push it down a little harder than others just to kind of get some thicker clumps. And then there's other places that's just a light touch. But remember, just keep the underpainting showing through in spots. There, let's finish up back in here. It's just light taps. And if you want a larger highlight, you just give it a little bit more pressure, press down. But don't cover up the underpainting. It's a little bright, you might be able to see it better. If you think about it in clumps, then it's a little bit easier to remember to leave some dark spots in there. See how it kind of goes in and out, and you kind of look like you're looking down inside the bushes? That's the kind of look you're looking for there. Yeah, just like that. All right. We'll bring this down a little bit further. There. Just like that. All right. Let's go ahead and clean the brush. Then we're going to pick up our medium flat bristle brush. And then we're going to be putting in some underpainting for some rocks. Color you want to use here is some blue and some burnt umber, which is the darker of the browns. Just kind of mix that just real well. And this is going to be a bank here, so this is going to kind of come down on an angle. We're just going to throw some rocks in. Again, just kind of clump them up. Don't think of individual ones because we'll separate those out after a while. Really nice and loose strokes. And whatever doesn't turn out to be a rock, we'll just kind of cover it with some grass anyways. And we'll have some over here. This actually is what this is that this is a part of the shoreline that goes back, and this part kind of jets out a little bit. So these rocks are going to be out in front of those other ones. And we'll drop some over here. Just wherever. And these are kind of hard to see a little bit, but they're there. I'll show you a technique if you want to ever show some water, like a river or something like that, and you can kind of see the rocks underneath it, so the river's not very deep. You just kind of go in and just start putting in some darks. I know you're thinking I really lost it now, but this really ends up looking pretty good. Now see, notice the brush strokes again, very loose. These are supposed to be rocks underwater. If you can't, this is about as loose as this can ever be, I think, because this looks nothing like a rock. But it will. So there's some darker spots, not so dark, some blobs, just some little squigglies here and there. Those will look like rocks, I promise. There. Something like that. Let's go ahead and clean that brush out. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to put in a lot of tree trunks. These are going to be some very, very tall trees. They're going to be on both sides, actually. And really what you want to look for is you want to get a variety of some very thin trees, some thicker trees, trees that are somewhat straight, trees that lean. A nice combination of a lot of different shapes. This is going to be a combination of some blue and some burnt sienna. The more burnt sienna you put in it, the browner it's going to be. So either way, it doesn't matter. Okay, loading your brush, getting it to that chiseled edge is what we've done in the last few paintings. And again, you just load it like this. You get that fine tip on there. Make sure you do some really, really thin lines. And these trees are going to go completely off the canvas. So these are pretty tall trees. So remember, the trees always get wider at the base. And you're going to have to reload often because probably most of the time one tree is going to take about one load of paint. This one will do a little wider. Put that here. What we're going to do too is we're going to put some leaves in front of these. So if you find some spots that you really don't like on your trees, it's a perfect opportunity to throw some leaves in there. But it's not going to be so thick that you can't see through there, though, either. To kind of get a nice edge on there, sometimes if you want to add a little bit of water to your brush and then go into the paint, kind of gives you the ability to do a little finer line. Nice little edge on it. But just vary the sizes and the shapes. I think this one we're going to have just come down like this. Bottom, and maybe a thin one. Like that. I'm just reloading with the same colors when I come down here. I'll have one like that. Maybe it's part of this tree. Yeah, let's put one here. And you can also, if you make some of these trees longer so they sit further down in your canvas, they'll give that impression that they're taller. Like this one stops there. I know it's tough to see. This one stops there. These stop up here, so it makes it look like that one's further back. You can just do that by just extending the length of your tree. But there's going to be some bushes and things in there, so that may not prove to be that important. I'm just going to define this one a little bit more. It's kind of thin painted. But again, see how this is kind of wavy? I'm going to be able to fix that with the leaves. So again, don't get really hung up on that. even though it's not the most attractive tree you've ever seen. And we'll put a little thin one over here. Well, that's a nice tree. Maybe we'll put a thicker one there. Like that. Now let's go on the other side. You can kind of already see how this background that we had put in before, how that takes second stage, because it's pushed way back because we've got the sky as the first layer. These trees are a second. The bushes here are a third. Those bushes are a fourth. Water is going to actually come between here, so that'll act as a fifth. You're going to have a combination of bushes and trees. So you've got a great deal of depth already, and we really are still just kind of doing some of the underpainting. And we'll put one right there. Again, this is the same combination. This is just some blue and some brown, or some blue and some burnt sienna. Whatever recipe you want to do. We'll have one thicker one coming here. And we'll have a thin one that's maybe back here. Just got bigger. I'll have to do a thin one somewhere else. Do a thin one here. Yeah, we'll have it here. Even up behind. And if you want to, you can do a couple branches. That is an ugly tree right there. Again, you're going to have some spots that you can't wait to cover, much like I am. And that's what the leaves are for. And let's put one back here. And he's back on that other side. I got some ugly trees. Good. I think we're going to work with that. Go ahead and clean that brush out. Now what we're going to do is we're going to work on the waterfall. And actually, I probably should have done this before I did the trees, but you can always, I guess this is a good example of how you start thinking about something else, you can always go back and make some adjustments on it. So this needs to be white with some blue. It needs to be a brighter white than what your underpainting is. So how we do this is that the waterfall actually is going to start right about here, and then it's going to kind of come down on an angle. But this up here is going to be the top part of the river. Let me get a little bit more blue in that. Just a little light. There's better. Now, here's what you can do, which is I'm going to have to do, because I probably should have done this before. So I don't want to go through and patch the water in there because you're going to have a lot of gaps between where you put highlights and the trees are. So all you got to do is, because you're going over something that's darker, is that it'll just be easy to cover this up. So the water just kind of comes around like this. and like this. And then it's going to start the waterfall. Now the thing to do with waterfalls is that to get depth in the water, so you want to be able to see inside the waterfall in a way, is that this takes a very, very light brush stroke. And the lighter the better because it gives you a better effect. If it ends up being way too light, you can always go back over it with a little bit firmer touch. But if you go on it with a heavy touch, you're going to ruin the whole effect of it. So again, get some paint. Go through with a light touch. See, I'm holding the handle of the brush way to the back to give it just a light touch. You go across, and then you come down. Like I said, if it's too light, just go back over it. But what's important is that you can see the white, but you can still see the dark. So there's parts of a waterfall that's thicker than others. You can kind of see what's behind it. So it's kind of straight across, then down. Straight across, then down. Just like that. And then down at the bottom, if you turn your brush, let me show you on this larger brush, and you kind of can see it better. So imagine this has got all the white paint on it and stuff. What I'm doing is I'm going into the canvas and I'm actually bending the bristles up like that. And how you get that nice little foamy broken up is where the paint comes up the bristles and stops. So when you bend that, you're getting the bristles that have no paint on it is starting to separate from the bristles that do have paint. So you get a really nice little fuzzy, crashy kind of look to it. Let me make this really a little bit brighter so you can see. Okay, see how that kind of looks kind of like a little splash? And I'm just going in and bending like that, and you get that crashy look. Then just grab the bottom of it, because this is where it flattens out. And it looks perfectly natural. Just like that. Let's go ahead and continue with the water. And a little bit of blue. Now this blue needs to be just a little bit lighter than what you have already down there. Now this is where we're going to be able to push these rocks underwater. Again, you've got to leave the underpainting showing in spots, because your eye will automatically be attracted to the lighter color that's on top. And this could be not only rocks, it could be some branches that have fallen off or trees that have fallen off. Could be a number of different things, but again, leave that up to the imagination. There'd just be a whole bunch of stumps and things that were there that maybe this got flooded out at some point. But you can see that if you just kind of cover the edges and things, you kind of get that impression that there's stuff underwater, the rocks, whatever you want that to be. Just kind of take it right up to the shoreline. And here again, here and there, kind of covering some up, leaving some showing. You get a touch of water. My paint's just a little dry, I think, from most of the lights that we have in the studio here. There we go. Just kind of moving around a little bit. You're covering some up, letting some show. You have some brighter spots, some softer spots. This is just really just some water current. But that undercolor is so important. Whether it's water, whether it's bushes, whether it's rocks, it doesn't really matter. That's really what holds up that object that you're painting. Get some more paint. And I don't very often take my brush off the canvas. I'm just kind of sliding it around, changing directions. There. See that impression that there's rocks and there's debris and there's stumps and twigs and everything else underneath there? That's how you do it. You throw it in there, and you put your medium highlights on top, covering some of it, letting some of it show, just to give a hint and let the person who's looking at your painting figure out what all that is. Okay? Don't get hung up on details. All right, now we got to go back and fix up my trees. And if you were following along with me stroke by stroke, I messed you up and you have to fix yours too. Again, that's going to be some black or some blue and some burnt sienna or burnt umber, either one. Now I simply just have to go back over those trees. It's not a big deal. And it's obviously it would have been better to have put the water in first, but since that didn't happen, this is a better solution than trying to get the water and paint it around things, because it just looks very, very patchy at that point. So go ahead and clean your brush. What we're going to do now is we're going to go to the other side of the bank, and we're going to put some grasses in and kind of settle these rocks down a little bit. Actually, what we should do is maybe highlight those rocks. Let's highlight the rocks first. That's going to be white with just a little bit of burnt sienna, so you kind of make a creamy color, or a creamy sandy color. Now it's time we go in and we do just like we did on the painting before. We just kind of go through and highlight where we want some rocks to be. Just go through and just kind of use your imagination and kind of pick out rocks. Again, make sure you alter the shape and the sizes. You can even change the color up a little if you want. If you want to make it a little bit browner, you can certainly do that, like I did there. And just work your way right down. Just wherever you want their rock to be. Back there. You see how these just kind of pop out. All you got to do is just suggest some highlight on it. And there it is. And I have a big one here. And a couple of small ones here. If you bring this one in front of that tree trunk, it looks like that rock is sitting in front of there. All right, that looks pretty good. Let's go ahead and clean the brush. Now what we're going to do is we're going to put some grass in between those rocks to kind of settle them down in. And that's going to be with a combination of some green and it's a little bit of yellow, very close to the color that we had before when we did those bushes. And what we want to do now is just kind of go in. If you go in and you go right into the canvas and just flip your brush a little bit, you kind of get that little sense of some grass. Just kind of here and there in between. Kind of helps to settle the rocks down. I hear that darn music going again. We got to stop already. Geez, I was just getting into this. I hope you're painting along with us and having a great time, because we're certainly having a great time bringing it to you. Check out the website. A lot of information on it. I hope we get a chance to paint together. If you get a chance, email me if you have any questions. If you've run into some problems while you're painting, I'll certainly be glad to answer you back. If you want to give me a phone call, I can answer you live. Hopefully we'll get a chance to work together and get a chance to paint together in a workshop or a class. But I'll see you next week.